Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn webinar on what business owners need to know about workers' compensation. I'm Adam Rossi from the Communication and Outreach Unit here at the Workers' Compensation Board, and joining me today is Neil Gilbert, who is the Board's Advocate for Business. Today, Neil is going to be discussing the basics of the workers' compensation system, including insurance types, coverage requirements, and employers' obligations under the law. He will also be covering some new information that you should be aware of regarding COVID-19. We do ask that you please keep your phone lines muted today, as we will be using the chat feature to receive your questions. You can enter your questions throughout the presentation in the chat box, or there's a Q&A section there. You can use that as well. But we do encourage you to use the drop-down to send your questions to the host or presenter. You can also hover over the WebEx tab on the top of your screen and click on chat, and it should pop up there for you. Neil will answer as many of your questions as he can, but if you have questions that we don't get to today, or if you think of something after the session ends, we will be providing you with resources at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Neil, and we will go ahead and get started.
Hello. Today I'm going to spend a little time talking to you about workers' compensation insurance, disability insurance, and paid family leave insurance. What you need to know about it, what it is, how you get it, and what my office can do to help you. The Advocate for Business Office was created out of legislation, and it's there basically to assist businesses with coverage and compliance questions. I travel across the state pre-COVID. Now we do it virtually to educate business owners and government personnel, code enforcement officers, on the workers' comp system. I meet with business associations, employer groups, chambers of commerces, and explain to them, what it is, who needs it, how do you get it, what do you do if you didn't have it and you should have had it. And also, while I'm out in the field, listen to the concerns by people in the business community. And I do report directly to the chairman of the board, and I would voice those concerns to the chair should they warrant looking into. So what is workers' compensation insurance? Workers' compensation insurance is a mandated insurance in the state of New York, and it covers on-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. It provides medical treatment for an injured worker and wage replacement for that worker, and it protects the employer as well from any legal action that might be taken by the employee related to that accident on the job. Disability benefits insurance is also required in the state of New York, and that insurance covers off-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. It has nothing to do with medical benefits. It only provides a limited wage replacement of up to $170 a week for a maximum of 26 weeks. Who needs coverage and who doesn't? Businesses with employees need coverage. So who's an employee? Basically, anybody providing a service to a for-profit business may be determined to be an employee of that business, and any compensated individual providing services to a not-for-profit can also be determined to be an employee of that not-for-profit, with limited exceptions, which would be clergy or teachers in a 501c3 designated not-for-profit. Well, we know who needs it. Who doesn't need it? A sole proprietor with no employees. It's me working for me. There's nobody else. I do not need workers' compensation or disability insurance. Partners in a partnership with no other employees. A one or two person owned corporation with no employees. A mom and pop, husband and wife. Just the two of them. They each hold at least one share of stock and own all the shares between them, and they hold the offices of the corporation. If there's nobody else involved, nobody else compensated, nobody volunteering to them, then coverage is not required. The same thing with LLCs. If only the people compensated and working for that LLC are members of the LLC, coverage is not required. well, how do you get workers' compensation insurance, and how do you figure out how much it costs? You get workers' comp insurance by going to one of 250 insurance carriers in the state of New York that sell workers' comp insurance. The State Insurance Fund, a state agency, New York State agency, also sells workers' compensation and disability insurance, and they are what we would call the insurance of last resort, which means they have to write your policy. You could want to get workers' comp insurance and go to a private carrier like Hartford or Zurich and tell them what you do, and they may not want to write your policy. The State Insurance Fund must write it for you. However, if you owe them money, then they do not have to write it until you pay your bill. The cost of the insurance is determined by a classification code, meaning what is it that you're doing? There's a class code assigned to all the different types of work. And then basically, how hazardous is that? That number is put to a per $100 of payroll. For example, if you're a clerical work may be classified as 30 cents per $100 of payroll. Then it's how big is your payroll and how safely you operate your business. Something like construction may be $8 per $100 of payroll and so forth. So it's how hazardous is it? How big is your payroll? How safely do you operate as compared to like businesses in your industry? If you operate more safely, your premium will go down. And there's also administrative expenses that every insurer has, so it's always good to check and see apples to apples with other agencies. Next slide, please. So some specific coverages, sole proprietors and partners we've gone over, independent contractors we'll hold off on for a moment, family members need coverage, domestic employees, if you want to hire a nanny or you want to hire someone to work in your home, if they work for you less than 40 hours a week, coverage is not required. If they work more than 40 hours a week, coverage is required. So if they live with you, coverage is required. If they go on vacation with you, coverage is required. But if they work less than 40 hours a week, coverage is not required. Independent contractors is a very important area to be aware of. Many people think that they can hire somebody and call them an independent contractor, pay them on a 1099, and therefore do not have to get workers' comp insurance or do any of the payroll withholding that employers have to do. And the employer likes that. The employee likes it because they get a bigger paycheck. However, that's all well and good until that person gets injured and they end up going to the hospital. And the first thing they're asked is, did this happen at work? And if they say yes, they're going to ask who do they work for, and they're going to point to you. And then that independent contractor relationship falls apart, and you are now what we would call an uninsured employer who's really responsible legally for the medical treatment and lost wages for that, quote, independent contractor. So before you get into an independent contractor relationship with somebody, say to yourself, if that person got injured and they went to the hospital and they asked them who they work for, would they say you? If that's the case, you know that they are not an independent contractor. On our website, wcb.ny.gov, we have a list of 12 criteria that our administrative law judges will use to determine whether somebody is truly an independent contractor. And they're weighted differently, but most importantly is direction and control. Are they using your equipment? Do they truly have their own business? There's an example I use of a restaurant in New York City that ran lobster night. Every Wednesday was lobster night. He hired the restaurant owner hired a person to come in and cook lobsters one night a week. Paid him on a 1099, considered him to be an independent contractor. That lobster cooker got burned and ended up going to the hospital and was asked the question, did this happen at work? And he said yes. And so the restaurant owner denied that he was an employee. So there was a hearing. And at the hearing, the judge said to the restaurant owner, "What kind of business do you have?" And he goes, "I have a restaurant." And he said to the owner, "What type of work did this person do for you?" He was a cook. So there's nothing independent about that. If the person that was injured was fixing the air conditioning unit and he had an air conditioning company of his own, that's an independent contractor. So don't fool yourself. And if you are nervous, if you're not certain, you can contact our office at the Advocate for Business office, and we'll go over it with you, and we'll discuss it with you so you can make a good, educated decision. You don't want to be an uninsured employer. But again, the fact is, we were talking about, do you control the time and manner of which the work is to be done? Does the person you're hiring have their own FEIN, their own Federal Employer Identification Number that makes them truly a business? Do they have a separate business establishment? Okay, so these are some of the criteria that are used. Go on the website, take a look, and again, if you have any doubts, contact our office. Construction workers under the law, it's even more stringent. There was the Construction Industry Fair Play Act, where workers are presumed to be an employee unless they can prove that they have their own business. Labor.ny.gov, look at Construction Industry Fair Play if you are in the construction industry, and make sure you follow those guidelines. General contractors under the law are liable for the workers' compensation claim of any uninsured sub. So if you are using subcontractors, you as the general contractor need to get a certificate of insurance from that general contractor where you are a certificate holder and will be notified if that insurance lapses. Okay, this way you will be certain not to be charged premium for the uninsured subcontractor. Going back to the premium information, workers' compensation is an estimated premium. You tell the carrier what you think you're going to be doing, how many employees and so forth, and you'll get an estimated premium. And then within a year, you will get audited. They're going to ask you for your books. You're going to show them how many people you paid, what you paid, and either you were correct and the premium was right, or you underprojected and you're going to owe more money, or you overprojected and you're going to get money back. But if you have a uninsured subcontractor, your insurance carrier would have to cover them should they be injured. So you're going to get charged a premium for them. That's why you collect the certificate of insurance and you present that to your carrier upon audit, and therefore you will not be charged premium. As I said before, it's recommended that you have your subcontractors add you as a certificate holder so that you will be notified if they don't pay their insurance. Workers' comp is like auto insurance. You can make a down payment and then pay monthly. So some unscrupulous subcontractor, in order to work for you, may make a down payment, give you a certificate of insurance, and then never make another payment and lapse. And then at the end of the year, you're going to get hit with that bill. However, if you were a certificate holder, you'd be notified. And therefore, you could call that person in and take them off the job until the insurance was back in place. I said earlier that workers' comp and disability are mandated in the state of New York, and if you do not have it, and you should have had it, there are severe penalties, monetary penalties, of up to $2,000 for every 10 days you don't have it. That could be $72,000 a year. If you have up to 5 employees, it's a misdemeanor, subject to a maximum of $5,000 penalty in addition to the other charge. And more than 5 employees is a Class E felony. Misclassification is the same as being uninsured. If you remember, I mentioned the class code that's applied to create your premium. So again, if you take that unscrupulous employer, he may know he needs to get insurance to get a contract or a permit. So he will get insurance from a carrier, but he will lie to them and tell them everybody working for me is doing clerical work. when in fact they're banging nails on a roof. That's misclassification, and that is the same as being uninsured, okay? And that's an egregious penalty. It's premeditated, and I don't help people who do that. There's also something in New York called the Debarment law, which means that if you have any penalty with the board whatsoever, you are barred from getting a contract in the state of New York for a year. There is no way off this list, and it is a terrible place to find yourself if you do business by getting contracts. So you never want to lapse your coverage. If you are penalized, don't stick your head in the sand. It's not going to go away, all right? What you need to do is make sure you get the insurance, then contact our office, and we will work with you on an appeal, and we will get the penalty reduced to probably a fraction of what it was. But we need to make sure that you have the proper coverage in place before we can do that appeal. The goal of the board is not to collect these penalties, it's to make sure that businesses have the proper coverage, that injured workers are taken care of, and employers have a legal playing field. As the employer, you want to make sure, if you want to control your premium costs, that you have the correct class code. You can always check with the Compensation Insurance Rating Board to see that the correct code is being applied. Follow your claims. If somebody unfortunately has a claim, stay in touch with the carrier, stay in touch with your employee. The sooner that claim is completed, the sooner they're back to work. And of course, you want to operate safely. Operating safely, one way to do it is to set up a labor management safety committee. Take an equal number of members from labor and management, make one person the chair and rotate that monthly, and walk through your property. Most accidents take place when somebody takes a shortcut. Management doesn't know the shortcuts. Labor knows the shortcuts. So you want to see what they are, identify them, and make sure that they're not happening. You do that by visiting the workplace and walking through it, going through the equipment, making sure that the guidelines sent by the distributors of this equipment are being followed, and establish safe procedures and train for safety. There is something called the Code Rule 60 Workplace Safety Prevention Incentive Program. It's overseen by the Department of Labor, and basically, if you set up a safety, drug, and alcohol prevention program in your business, you can save up to 10% on your workers' comp insurance in the first year and up to 6% in the second and third years. So you can go to the website www.labor.ny.gov as listed below and look at the Workplace Safety Prevention Incentive Program and see if you think it's something that could work for you. The New York State Department of Labor also does on-site consultations where they'll come to your business, walk through it with you, and help you mitigate the safety risks at no cost to you. Again, you can go on their the website, or you can call at the number listed here. As an employer, your responsibilities are to make sure you have the proper insurance, display the poster that you will be sent, and should you get a claim filed, report it immediately. Section 120 of the New York State Workers' Compensation Law states that an employee cannot be discriminated against for filing a claim. Employees can only be terminated for a valid business reason, including misconduct, insubordination, lack of work. I get many calls from employers who tell me that their employee's been out for a year and they want to replace them. Are they allowed to? The answer is yes. You are not allowed to terminate somebody because they filed a claim, but you can replace them if you need to. And lastly, employees are eligible regardless of their citizenship or their immigration status. New York State paid family leave provides job-protected paid time off to either bond with a child, take care of a sick family member, or assist a family member that's being deployed overseas in the armed services. It is not to be taken for yourself. All private employers are required to provide this coverage, and the employer must get the coverage. It's a rider in a disability benefits package, and they can deduct the cost of this coverage from the employee's paychecks. The employees pay the cost of the insurance unless the employer wants to pay for it. Sole proprietors, if you're an individual sole proprietor, you can get the coverage for yourself. Within the first 26 weeks of starting a business, there's no waiting period. But after 26 weeks of starting that business, there is a 2-year waiting period. As I said before, the coverage is paid for by employee payroll contributions unless the employer chooses to pay. The Department of Financial Services will set the employee contribution rate to match the cost of coverage, and that information is at a great website, paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/cost. As an employer, you need to get the coverage and pay the premium, and you do that with funds that you collect from the employee payroll deductions. Tell your employees about paid family leave. You need to provide wage information to the carrier if an employee does file for it. And visit the employer section of paidfamilyleave.ny.gov for full details. As it relates to COVID-19, if a worker notifies you that they've tested positive for COVID-19 and they feel that they got it on the job, you need to report that to your insurance carrier. COVID-19 quarantine leave provides workers with job protection and financial compensation when they or their minor dependent child are subject to a mandatory or a precautionary order of quarantine or isolation. Most employees will get compensated by using a combination of benefits, which may include the new employer provided paid sick leave, depending on the size of the employer, or paid family leave and disability benefits. Your role in implementing the new COVID-19 quarantine leave, whether you're self-insured or providing these benefits through an insurance carrier, is largely the same as it's been for paid family leave. There are some new forms available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms. And again, visit the paid family leave website /COVID-19 for full details. The COVID-19 quarantine leave, employers with 10 or fewer employees and a net income less than $1 million, they'll provide job protection. Eligible employees may use paid family leave and disability benefits for the period of quarantine. Employees with 11 to 99 employees and employees with 10 or fewer employees and a net income greater than $1 million will provide at least 5 days of paid sick leave, provide job protection, and eligible employees may use paid family leave and disability benefits for the period of quarantine. Lastly, employers with 100 or more employees, as well as all public employers, will provide at least 14 days of paid sick leave and guaranteed job protection for the period of quarantine. COVID-19 premium-related reductions: report payroll through your carrier. Your payroll may be much less than you thought it was going to be. Advise your carrier of PPE, personal protective equipment that you've purchased. You may be able to get reimbursed for that. And see if you qualify for the class code for telecommuter reassigned employees. If your people are doing payroll related to Code 8873, clerical work. For more information on paid family leave, these are the numbers on the website to reach out to. We're happy to announce here at the board we have a new claim system coming soon. It's called Onboard, and really it's gonna help. It's gonna access the real-time claim status, online self-service features and e-forms, and it's scheduled to launch in a limited release in the spring of 2021. Basically, it's just going to speed up the entire process for all of the participants, get the claims put in faster, get medical treatment faster, get your employees back to work faster. We always look forward for you to follow the board at the various websites and social media. And my office, that 518-486-3331 is my desk. Either myself or my staff will answer the phone. Email goes directly to me. We're here to help you. Again, if you have questions, reach out to us before you pull the trigger so we can help you.